Welcome to CWS Christian Writing and Speaking. I'm your host, Jackie Wilson, and today's guest has a unique story. He says that his family immigrated to the U.S. from Ukraine when it was still under Soviet Union rule. And he said they did this because of religious persecution. He said if you worshiped God, went to church, you were followed or wiretapped. Sometimes everyday privileges were taken away. In the extreme, you disappeared. He says his faith has driven him and continues to drive him as a faith driven entrepreneur. And it also influenced his decision to become a foster parent to 26 kids in 4 years. Let's welcome to the CWS stage, Mr. Roman Prokopchuk. Got it
Thank you,
right?
man. Yeah, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Roman, I am excited to hear your story because sometimes I think we forget that other people have experiences different from ours. Of course, we're all unique people. Our racial makeup, our social status, that could all influence how people treat us. But to have a family have to immigrate because of religious persecution, it seems like something from like this 15 or 1600s, but it's still something that's happening today. And I think it'd be interesting to know what actually is happening and why you believe it is happening. Can you share your story?
Yeah, sure. Kind of under communism, technically there is no God under the state. So like the state is your God. You're, supposed to obey them, and
Mhm.
there's no kind of religious freedom or ability to worship and obviously praise God. And you can see similar things going on these days in like China, where if you're like caught with like a Bible, you get like 10 years in prison or, sent to like a worker colony. So under the Soviet Union, it was similar. So if you believed in God and you openly, expressed that, you went to church, even though it was illegal, churches were still open, but you've had, the KGB kind of waiting outside, documenting who's coming in and who's going. Like I said, like you mentioned, wiretapping, sending people to prison camps, things of that nature. And in 1990, when the Soviet Union was kind of close to, I guess, collapsing, the Berlin Wall fell, Ukraine got its independence 2 years after, but we were given an opportunity to leave. We had family in the U.S. that acted like our sponsors at that time. Basically, a sponsor kind of vouches for you for like a few months. Technically, if there's anything financial or anything needed, they kind of like tell the US government, hey, we're gonna take care of this, and it's kind of on us. So myself, my mom, my dad, my grandparents, my aunt, and my younger brother that was under a year old, we left. You can only kind of leave with the clothes on your back, like the money in your pockets, any property and stuff like that. You would have to leave behind. And we went through Vienna, Austria, Rome, Italy, and then came to New Jersey. Technically, we are supposed to go to San Mateo, California, but we ended up on the East Coast, which I also like think about how I would have been different in terms of
Mhm.
the variables in California versus New Jersey. But that was kind of like the short, journey. But there's a lot of that currently still going on, a lot of religious repression.
Mhm.
Obviously, the war in Ukraine currently, some of the occupied territories in Ukraine now, there's religious oppression, and the
Mhm.
ability to worship God and stuff isn't allowed. People being arrested, tortured, stuff like that. So it's still going on. A lot of countries outside of the US, and oftentimes people in the US don't really think about it because we're kind of in our own little bubble. Obviously, there's
Mhm.
still issues, societal issues in the US, but for the most part, if anyone's traveled outside of the US, they should obviously, count their blessings in terms of, what you're free to say and do, and in turn, go to church, worship, and be able to have those kind of freedoms.
Yeah. So you grow up in the US, you go to school, you go on to college, you get a job with the government actually. And that was a unique experience, right?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I came here when I was 5, which was nice because I went to kindergarten right away. I learned English. I went to kind of ESL, English second language, picked up the
Mhm.
language quickly because before a certain age, you're able to pick up
Yeah.
languages and phonetics and not retain an accent. So yeah, I went to school, all of school in the US. I went to Rutgers University for criminal justice. Last semester, I got an internship with the Secret Service on the counterfeit currency squad. Held the top secret clearance. And then when I graduated, 2008, basically the recession hit. State, local, federal agencies froze hiring.
Yeah.
And basically I was kind of down on myself. The fact that I mean, a lot of people still experience this. They go to college, they have a degree, so they think automatically, kind of that like early 20s mindset, I got this degree, now I can do whatever I want. That's not necessarily reality.
Mm.
So at that time, I was looking for a job for months and months. Somebody gave me an opportunity. Basically, I was at the gym, one of the only things that really kind of kept my mind off of it. And somebody basically said, come out to my car. I want to give you something, which obviously could have been anything. So
Right.
I said, why not? And then I went outside and they opened their trunk and gave me a packet about search engine optimization. They said, read this and then, take another month or two, read up on it online, and you can start doing this for my business. I saw I had nothing to lose. So I took that opportunity and, what is it, 2023? And, over a decade later, I've been in the digital marketing space, held director roles, worked on Fortune 500 accounts, founded my own agency in 2012. So like out of that uncertainty and kind of, I guess, not necessarily being sure like what can come out of something, really taking a leap and running with it.
Yeah, that definitely speaks to your faith. And you say that your career is driven by your faith. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I think in my early 20s and stuff, obviously when you start working, you kind of have like goals in terms of potentially if you're an entrepreneur, starting a company or reaching a certain title, and not necessarily thinking about those around you per se. You get kind of
Mhm.
caught up in the work and possibly, promotions and this, that, or the other. But kind of my mindset changed when I turned, like I would say 29 to 30, to
Mhm.
really kind of give back in the mindset where it's like you don't only have to be the person kind of on the elevator and keep everybody out, that everybody's
Mhm.
a threat. Really, like, everybody can come up and help each other, and me sharing my knowledge and experience openly and help as many people that I didn't necessarily have while I was kind of coming up in the digital marketing field, to
Mhm.
potentially bypass certain bottlenecks that I experienced, or pitfalls that people can avoid just simply discussing with someone that has been in a career longer, to kind of just really adding value and not really asking for anything in return.
Mm. Yeah. And your faith is not only active through your profession, but it's also active, very active in your personal life because, as mentioned in the introduction, you fostered kids. You fostered 27 kids in a very short time frame. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so that journey started. We were licensed May 31st of 2018, and then the day right after, we had two children, two brothers, dropped off at our doorstep. That kind of journey started. Then the last 5 years, my wife and I have experienced six miscarriages. We've spent over, $100,000 out of pocket on infertility treatments and that kind of stuff. So obviously, there's that loss. Two of the miscarriages occurred on Christmas days, which obviously have considerable, pain attached now to that specific day. But as naturally trying and still doing infertility and stuff, we thought about it, that we could potentially obviously give back to kids, and if the opportunity arose and the situation was right, potentially, adopt as well. So
Mhm.
we kind of, did that together. It took us 10 months to get a license and everything done in terms of home study, the background checks, stuff like that. And up until this point, we've had 27 kids, as you mentioned. The most we've had was five children under the age of four, which obviously
Wow.
is 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 intense for people that have children, they of any age, and especially more than one. Kind of having that experience, but also kids coming from obviously less fortunate situations that have seen abuse and neglect and malnourishment and have experienced things of that, sort as well. Kids that don't necessarily have or had positive male and female role models to, get a child in your home that's removed with all this trauma and things that they're dealing with, and some of which have dealt with more at age 3 or 4 than most adults will deal in their whole lives, and then providing kids in a loving environment and a loving home, and giving them that chance to kind of grow and rehabilitate in that sense, in terms of like what they've experienced. You see kind of the transformation, and that's obviously a reward in itself. And a lot of the state division of child services see kind of like a night and day. Oftentimes children that were in other homes that come in and don't necessarily even smile or emotionless, and then a caseworker comes a month later and they're like completely like night and day. They're smiling, laughing, talking, at some of which were nonverbal from experiencing trauma. So
Mm.
that's a blessing in itself.
So many leaps of faith define your life. Gotta know what is next for you.
Yeah, so I mean, I have a digital marketing agency, so obviously, like staying up with that and expanding that. I have my own podcasts, I've co-hosted shows. So really kind of expanding and I guess leaving a footprint in the audio space, as well as obviously collaborating and giving as much knowledge and value to, other platforms as well. So it's really at this point, um, giving back. And one thing that I'm passionate about, that I do a lot of interviews on and media publications, is foster care reform, because being a foster parent, you see all the
Mm.
bottlenecks and all the cracks in the system that aren't a benefit to the children. So really bringing about kind of change in that sense, both on a state and federal level, is something I'm passionate about.
Yeah, I love it. Roman, how can people connect with you?
Yeah, so the company website is novazoradigital.com. My personal podcast is digitalsavageexperience.com. You can find that, and on pretty much every social platform you can find me. Obviously, the last name's a little hard, but if you try to sound it out a little bit and type it out, you can find me on every platform.
Yeah, I love it. Roman, as we close out your interview today, what is the one thing that you feel like the audience should take away from all of your experiences as Christians? And you told us about these multiple leaps of faith. Your family took a leap of faith leaving Ukraine. You had to deal with job loss and had to reinvent yourself, and then you and your wife experienced hardship due to miscarriage, and then you decided to turn that around and create beautiful experiences for others. So what is your final word for the audience?
Yeah, and also, since last time we spoke, last 6 weeks, I had two family members pass away.
Oh.
So, I mean, those kind of things happen in life, and your faith really gets you through it. I guess at some point, certain situations that keep happening, you may think, why bad things happen to good people, but I think regardless, that's a part of life. And nobody's really made in kind of like the harbor or a safety net. Everyone's going to experience something painful in their lives, and that is kind of like an open wound. And with your faith and praying about it, having people in your corner, obviously having a strong faith in Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, that open wound eventually becomes a scar. Yes, you're reminded of it, but then it gets you through some of the more challenging things you may experience later on in your life.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing with our audience today, Roman. CWS audience, you have heard his story. I'm just so grateful that through all of the hardships that he faced, that he is now doing positive things with it. And I think that is a clear message here, that no matter what it is that you're going through, definitely you got to depend on your faith in Jesus Christ. But take those experiences and turn it into something beautiful. He is a living example of what can happen when you do. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. And until next time, beautiful people, God bless.